mostly kind of related to what the plumbers are going to be dealing with. And two very common materials that we deal with when we're dealing in drainage, okay, is ABS and PVC. Anybody ever heard of those before? You've heard of PVC probably. That's pretty common, right? Anybody ever heard of ABS? Okay. What does it stand for? Anybody know what PVC stands for? Polyvinyl chloride. Exactly. Right? ABS, really simple. Acrylonitrile butadiene styrene. Just keep that in your head, okay? You don't need to know that, it's okay. So, acrylonitrile butadiene styrene and PVC are actually two different types of plastics, and they react in different ways to different things, okay? First thing I want to kind of talk to you a little bit about when it comes to the plastics and everything that we're going to be dealing with is that occasionally, for various reasons, we have to transition between those, and we have to understand a little bit about the properties of each and whether or not we can use similar things in similar applications. If I'm running a piece of pipe somewhere and I am going to transition to another piece of pipe, does the material inside of that pipe change magically as soon as it crosses a barrier to a new piece of pipe? No, so whatever I'm putting in, if I'm ever transitioning any type of product, I have to make sure that what I am putting through the pipe or the medium, you guys ever heard the term medium? Okay. The medium that I'm putting through the pipe, and I don't mean somebody like a clairvoyant and I'm trying to push them through a pipe. I'm talking about, you know, water, glycol, chemicals, slurry, whatever. Anything that or steam even, right? If I'm putting it through one type of pipe and I'm going to transition, I better make sure that both of those pipes are equally able to handle whatever I'm putting through it. Does that make sense? Okay, so I'm going to grab a piece of pipe here just to kind of demonstrate a few things for you. Because I want you to notice certain things about this pipe. What's the first thing you notice? It's black, right? That's a visual indicator of what I might be working with. Is this the only black pipe in the world? Nope. Iron's black, right? Black iron pipe, we use that, okay? Polyethylene can be black, okay? This here is gonna be ABS, okay? And then it's got a bunch of markings on it. So this is the color that we put in piping is often a visual indicator of what we're dealing with, so that if I'm looking at something up in a ceiling, and if I can't read the writing on it, okay, then the color, they use it in industry as a sort of, you know, I can generally figure out what it is I'm looking at. Now, are there more than one type of ABS? Yeah, there is, okay? There's something that we call Cellcore, right? And then there's other types as well. Different grades made by different manufacturers, right? Some of it's gonna be made by IPEC, some of it's gonna be made by somebody else, whatever, right? That's slightly less relevant, right? What's the most relevant thing that I really want to know about this pipe beyond the fact that it's the right pipe, ABS? Anybody? Sorry? Size is helpful. Is that what you were going to say? Size? Yeah. I can't always tell by looking at it from that, right? Because a lot of these are they're not sized all the same. Some are sized by inside diameter, and some are sized by outside diameter. Okay? And and it's not even down to the pipe, it's down to the pipe size. Once I get over 4-inch, right, in some pipes, it changes. It's like, well, we were measuring by outside diameter, but now we're measuring by inside diameter, or vice versa, right? Okay. So size is relevant. What else do I want to know about this? Sorry? Yeah, what am I going to put in here, right? Yeah, what else? Pressure rating, yeah, right, we call that pressure rating, right? What's the other thing that's usually a factor? Pressure and temperature, yeah. Well, wall thickness changes, right? We call that schedule, right? Has anybody ever heard the term schedule? Okay, we'll have schedule 40 pipe and steel pipe, schedule 80. We can also have sched 40 ABS and sched 80, right? That's just indicating wall thickness, okay? Those are important, right? Anything else? It's a really important one. Okay. Is this actually allowed to be used in this country? Okay, right? Am I allowed to use this type of pipe? Is it a given that when you go and pick something up somewhere that it's actually rated for being in this country? Not anymore, right? not so much. And if I'm buying at a big box store like Home Depot or something like that, and that's where I'm buying my stuff, it ought to be, and it usually should be. They're held to the same standard. They're not allowed to sell me stuff that's not rated for use in this country, but they have. It's happened, right? Okay? They've done it. Because they get stuff at cost from different places, and they're like, well, this is good, we'll just sell it. We got a really good deal on it, right? And then it turns out that the inspectors catch it, and they're like, nope, can't use it. So how do I know if this is useful in this country? Yep, right there. CSA. What does CSA stand for? You're close. You got 2 of them right. Well, actually, sorry, you only got 1 right. Canadian Standards Association. Yeah, not the agency. Yeah, sorry. Yeah, there you go. Canadian Standards Association. Okay, there's another one that we want to know for like gas and stuff. That's the CGA. You can probably guess what that one stands for, right? So I need to be able to see these stamps right here, and I need to be able to see them enough, right? By that I mean if I put it up in a ceiling, and if I cover up that ceiling and I need to cut a hole in the ceiling to see what's up there, and I look up there, I had better be able to put my eyes on writing somewhere. So they actually have a rule about how frequently this occurs on the piping, and it's got to be a minimum of once every 1.5 meters. Okay, I got to be able to see writing on it. So as a tradesperson, if you're going to be up there installing this stuff, what's a really nice thing to do if you're installing something in a ceiling? Put it face down, right, with the writing in a place where somebody can actually read it, because there's nothing worse than cutting open a ceiling and seeing this side of the pipe, right? Because now you got to see if you can get your eyes on it, if there's any question, right, about what it is that you're dealing with, okay? This is the one type of pipe we're going to be looking at today. This is the ABS, of course, right? We talked about that. The other kind, I'm just going to lay this down in front of you here, if that's all right. The PVC is kind of one of those things that comes in multiple colors, right? I can have this in white, I can have it in blue. They kind of color it whatever they feel like sometimes, depending on the application. There's a lot of things I can do with this that I can't, or a lot of versions of this that I have other than ABS. ABS tends to just be black, and it's good for really one thing, you know? It is good for drainage, well, 2 things, drainage and venting, I suppose, yeah. Has to be protected from sunlight. Well, this is true of almost anything that's plastic anywhere ever, okay? Now, there are certain plastics that are more resistant to UV, or they can be coated to be protected from UV and stuff like that. Generally speaking, if you've ever wondered why you don't see like roof drains run in plastic of any kind, right? What does UV do to plastic? Anybody know? Makes it brittle, right? Okay. So let's see. We're going to test your knowledge a little bit. This is one of those kind of things that's becoming an extension of plumbing because there's so much of it to do. Has anybody ever heard of poly B piping? No? Polybutylene. You've heard of it kind of, maybe a little bit? Okay. Sorry? On the radio you could hear about it because insurance agencies talking, or guys advertising about replacing it, right? Okay. So poly B piping, if you grew up in a house that was built sometime in the 90s, there's a good chance that your house has got water lines that are gray, plastic. Has anybody seen gray plastic water lines in their own home? Okay. This is poly B piping, okay? Since it's been taken out of circulation, it's proved to kind of fail over time and stuff like that. But what they're finding out now is that a lot of it had to do with how that pipe was stored before it was installed. And a lot of guys just kind of kept their plastic stuff laying out in the yard. And even now, you go to the wholesalers and you go to Wolseley or Emco or any of those places that sell this stuff all the time, and where do they keep this stuff? It's sitting outside. I don't think that's good, right? Because we all know that plastic and UV are not a good combination. What's the other thing that happens when I apply direct sunlight onto this pipe? Yeah, I mean, it expands and contracts, and things expand, everything expands and contracts with heat, right? But plastic, say, if I take a look at copper, and I can leave that outside forever, and it doesn't really matter, and it'll expand slightly, right? It's got a lower coefficient of expansion. Plastics, all generally speaking, have a very high coefficient of expansion, which means that they're going to grow more under the same amount of temperature than other products, right? Okay. And if I ever put I remember this from putting this stuff on my truck, and I'd bring it there and it's 20 degrees outside and the sun is blasting down on it, and I unload this stuff off of my truck and I'm basically dealing with a whole pile of bananas. Okay, I don't have a single straight piece of pipe among them. Now I got to figure out how to lay it down in the ditch. Well, I know it's going to straighten out eventually, but you know, I still want to think about that a little bit, right? Okay, I want the writing up, but it's all like facing down. Anyway, all these fun little considerations, okay? So yeah, UV is another important consideration, right? This is mostly going to be installed underground, indoors, up in ceilings, whatever, away out of the sunlight, not an outdoor application, okay? Now before Brendan reminded me that I should talk about UV, I was going to talk about something else. Oh yeah, we're talking about the different colors of PVC. PVC can come in like all these different colors. Now, ABS is pretty straightforward. Like I said, it's all black, and the glue that we use is also always the same color, okay? The glue that I use for ABS is ABS glue. There's varying kinds and different viscosities, right? Some of it's a little runnier, some of it's a little bit stickier, right? But it's all yellow, right? It's all yellow. And so that's a nice one for inspectors. When they go there and they look at the job, they can tell right away whether or not you've used enough glue or too little glue or whatever, or if you use the right glue, okay? Now with PVC, you can have gray PVC, white PVC, blue PVC, all these different colors, and you can also have blue glue. You can also have gray glue, right? Okay, we use something else on this because it's a different type of plastic than ABS. I can't just apply glue directly to it, okay? I actually have to prime it first, right? And I can have purple primer and I can have clear primer, right? I need to prime this and I need to make sure I have the right glue. So with PVC, you gotta be careful because depending on the application I'm putting it in, if I'm putting it in drainage, right, it's gonna be a certain type of PVC and it's gonna be a certain type of glue. If I'm putting it in a pressure situation, meaning I'm gonna fill this up with pressurized water, right? Gravity or drainage is gravity drainage, right? I have to tilt my pipe down. I don't apply pressure to that, right? Okay. So, but sometimes I use this stuff for water lines and I have to have the right kind of PVC pipe. And for that I need the correctly rated glue, okay? And I need to, have you guys talked about MSDS yet? Have you guys ever heard of these material safety and data sheets, okay? Okay, that's just talking about like, you know, what is this product? What's the hazards of using this product? What's it good for? All the information about the product, okay? I gotta pay attention to the temperatures in which I install this stuff and the temperatures at which I can use glue and primer and all those things, right? The primer is good at pretty much any temperature, but the glue itself, it's got a limit, right? So if you're ever working for a residential company installing houses, there's a lot of times when you're working cold, right? Okay, and you're installing drainage in a brand new build and stuff like that, and it's minus 25 outside, you can go to your boss and you can show them the can of glue and be like, not today. We're not using this glue today because it's below the temperature rating, right? So being aware of that stuff is also important, right? So I want to know about the pressure rating. I want to know about the temperature rating. I need to know about the application. I need to know what situation I'm putting it in terms of, you know, what's going on with the temperature where I'm working. Not just the operating temperature of this, but the installation temperature of it. All those things matter. If I know that I'm installing it in minus 30 or minus 20, is that pipe going to be smaller or larger than it would be in its normal installation? It will be smaller. It will have contracted, right? Because this stuff expands so much, I need to install things like expansion joints every once in a while because I know that the temperature is going to change. So I need to put in these joints that kind of allow for that expansion and contraction, right? So when I'm thinking about all these things, right, which is inevitably what you end up thinking about, and then it becomes second nature and you can stop thinking. So, hey, here's some white PVC right here. And Dennis. So, right? Slightly different, right? Still PVC, okay? Notice the difference between the ends, right? You can see that they're different, okay? I can't straight up connect this stuff. I need to get fittings that put it together. This, if I'm just doing length after length after length, this is what we call a bell and spigot end pipe, right? Okay, it's got bell right here. I mean, we don't really have spigots anymore, but that was like a little enlargement at the very end of this, okay? And that was back when we made cast iron or steel pipe in that fashion, okay? So, again, I'm gonna wanna look at it, and there's interesting information I'm gonna find on here, by the way. Okay, it's gonna give me my metric and my imperial measurement. Welcome to Canada. Probably the only place in the world where they bother to do that. Maybe some places in the States. Okay? Why do they do that? in Canada. Yeah, but why do we also talk in metric? Because of the Brits. Yeah, right? And you all do it, whether or not you want to, right? In terms of distance, and don't give me hours. How far is it from here to Edmonton? Less, it's about 300 kilometers. How tall are you? 5 what? 5 what unit? 5 meters? You're 5 feet, 8 inches, right? Okay, well there you go. You just told me something in metric, you just told me something in imperial. This is Canada, okay? Nowhere else. 2 languages that we speak here. Everybody thinks it's English and French. It's not. Okay, so on here I will find those things, right? The other thing I'm gonna find out, of course, is who made it. That's also useful. I've had to call those people and ask them interesting questions before, right? I went into a job where I was looking at some pipe up in the ceiling and it was blue, it was plastic. I could tell it was PVC of some kind. It was being used for water lines, so it was pressure rated, right? And then what did I notice is that it had yellow glue attaching it all together, and I had a panic moment because I was like, oh my goodness, whoever installed this stuff put PVC together with ABS glue. That would be awful because that pipe won't hold under pressure, no chance. So I called up Haefcke and I said, hey guys, I'm in this place and they got pressure rated pipe. It's blue, it's from you guys. I can see it on here. And he's like, let me just stop you right there. I already know the question you're gonna ask. I'm sorry, this is a blanket apology from Haefcke. We'll never make yellow PVC glue ever again, but the glue that's on there is actually PVC glue. We took it out of circulation because I've been fielding these calls for like 4 years, right? So, we've reserved now almost exclusively yellow glue for ABS pipe. Okay, but if you ever see that, right, might still be worth the call. It's probably okay. All right, so the other thing I'll find on here, manufacturer's size, schedule, get 40, okay, right, PVC, just verifying what I think I already know, okay, potable, what does that mean? What's that? I can drink it, but I mean specifically I'm going to want to use this in a potable installation. What does that mean? Not drainage. I'm going to want to use this for drinking water, right? Pressurized system. This is pipe that is rated for potable installations, which means it'll be pressure rated for your typical potable installation, which is what we drink out of the faucet, which is going to be, I mean, it'll be rated higher than that, but I mean, typically the water inside of those systems could be up to 80 PSI. Or even higher even sometimes, 100 PSI. I'm not gonna take this pipe and put it in that situation because that's not what it's designed for, okay? So that's a really relevant and useful piece of information to get off the pipe, okay? All right, anything else that I can get off here? Oh look, right there it'll even tell me this is good to 330 PSI. That's really good, okay? They give it to you in KPA, kilopascals, right? What else have I got here? Oh, at 73 degrees F, Fahrenheit. That's interesting. 73 degrees Fahrenheit. Does anybody here actually know how to talk in Fahrenheit? Anybody know what that is roughly in the Celsius temperature? What's that? Anybody know what it is? It's about 22, 23 degrees, okay? That's also listed on here, by the way. It will say 23 degrees on here, okay? That's interesting though. Now, I mean, okay, I'm doing potable water with this. I can put fresh water through here. Can I put hot fresh water through here? No. Okay. I'm so glad I read the pipe because I might have stopped at potable and thought, great, let's do our whole system. And I know you think that maybe this hasn't happened before. It's happened and it slipped past inspectors. There's a whole building over on Crowchild Trail and 17th Avenue, it's a condo high-rise. That entire building is piped in the wrong material. Not rated for its use. Don't move into that condo. They shut down once a week for repairs. Believe it or not, I've never seen this before in my life, but I actually got up there, they called me because of, like, they've called every contractor in town to try and deal with this place and everybody gives up. But I actually went up into the ceiling there and I saw previous leak repairs. You know what the repair was? It wasn't them replacing pipe, it was them building a drain pan to catch the drip that'll never go away and then directing it to another place. That's how they were dealing with the problem. They're like, screw it, we can't do shutdowns anymore. The residents have had it up to here and they're about ready to sue us. So we're not shutting down anymore, we're just catching leaks. There's no insurance that's gonna cover that building. Don't move into that building. Okay, that condo developer has gone under. The mechanical contractor that did it has gone under. So yeah, you can mess up. You can get that wrong. Don't get it wrong. Please don't get it wrong. Okay, anything else on here? No, that's pretty much everything I want to know. There is a little listing here, B137.3, ASTM, that's an approval agency, American Standards and something, I can't remember what the TM stands for. The B137.3 is going to be a code that it's associated with. Okay, so lots of good information on here. All right, you guys are like, I know this is a shop class. It's starting to feel a lot like theory. So I'm going to hand out the project, and we're going to talk about what it is that we're going to do today. All right, so just bear with me a minute while I grab it. All right, so instead of that being an ABS TY, this will be a PVC TY. So just to remind yourself that that's what we're doing. You can write that in on your sheets so you don't get confused, just in case you happen to find an ABS TY on there. And this will be an ABS 90. Okay? All right. So we're going to have you build this project, and like I said, when I move from one material to another, we call that transition, right? Okay? The orientation of this fitting matters, okay? Because I want you to notice I built this kind of a slope thing on there. So let's show you what I mean by that. Okay? This here is called a TY or a sanitary T. Okay? A TY or a sanitary T. I'm going to pass that one around. You guys can all take a good look at it. You can have this back now. Thanks. I may get back from you though in a minute. Sorry. Okay. And here we have a 90. Now, the ABS 90 is called a 90 because it makes a 90-degree turn, right? That makes sense, okay? It's a right angle. The TY also makes a right angle, so it's not really a Y, which is why we call it more like a T, right? Okay? But because it has that swoop on it, it's obviously there for a reason. I want things to get directed in a certain way, so this one has, like, I can get it wrong, right? I can get it backwards. And people do sometimes, okay? Depending on what's happening. So, what was this one listed here as in your page? That's ABS? And what's this one? That's, okay, so this is supposed to be PVC? All right, well, we'll keep that PVC. I'm gonna see if we wanna make any more changes. What's this one supposed to be? We can keep that one ABS, let's make it ABS. That means you're gonna have to make another transition, okay? We'll make this one PVC, okay? And we're gonna make this one ABS because I don't want you to have to make too many transitions. So this is your new project. Whatever it says on there, you're gonna have to alter it to match this, okay? Now I have 3 glues I could use here. Okay, I have ABS glue, that makes sense. I also have PVC glue, right? Sometimes we call them solvents, okay? I have PVC solvent, okay? And when I put ABS together, it works in one way, and when I put PVC together, it works a little differently. ABS glue has this capability of taking ABS and melting it slightly almost, right? What it does is it kind of emulsifies the product a little bit so that if I actually was to kind of let it sit there for a minute and I wipe the glue off with my finger, I'd also get a little bit of black coming off of the pipe. So the pipe will have disintegrated a little bit under that glue, right? Okay? With PVC glue, it doesn't do that. It won't do that for me, right? What it does is it's kind of like the glue is the bonder, right? In this case, what I'm doing is I'm solvent welding. ABS solvent welds together. It actually welds the product together, okay? And there's a window of time where you can do this and you can put it together and then you can take it apart again if you got it wrong or you wanted to change something, right? But it's not a very long window of time, okay? For human strength, okay, we're talking like 3 minutes maybe, right? Beyond that, you're getting out tools to try and pull it apart. And after that, what you're doing is you're actually cutting the fitting off and you're chipping it off and taking the material off. And you can do that. You can do that. Even after it's been in for years, you can still do that, okay? PVC, the bonding is happening at the glue itself. The glue it's not welding that product together, but I do need to loosen up the PVC I need to take off this protective layer that's on top of here, okay? Because this does have a slight UV protection applied to it. And if I don't remove that, then that glue's not gonna hold it together, right? Under pressure, it'll just pop right off. So I actually have to prime it first, okay? So I'm gonna use primer and glue with PVC. So for all PVC to PVC connection, right? If I do PVC to PVC, I need to have glue and primer. Not in that order, the other way around, but you get it, right? Primer first and then glue. I need to make sure that I just primed it not that long ago. I saw guys who were doing long, big jobs with PVC, and the one guy's like, you know what? For economy of time, you start priming fittings and then I'll glue them, right? When I'm ready to put them in. But this guy could have primed fittings that'll be good for days, because it doesn't take very long. And then he just sets them aside, and he did that. And yeah, a lot of leaks happened in that job, because the window of time is like within 20 minutes of having primed it, you really want to have that thing glued. Probably sooner, right? Because you can know whether or not that primer is any good anymore, because you'll feel that the pipe feels rough, right? It's nice and smooth, and then you hit the primer side and it gets a little bit tacky and rough, okay? But not like super rough. It's not like, you know, like rubbing a scab or something, but it's, you know what I mean, right? I don't know why I chose that as an analogy. Okay, what's that? Because you're a masochist, exactly. Not me, that guy. Anyway, just kidding. You're not really. I don't know. Maybe you are. It's okay if you are. Anyway, so PVC to PVC, I need glue and primer. ABS to ABS. I could just use glue. Preferably, not just preferably, definitely yellow ABS glue. You won't find any other kind out there. Not that I'm aware of anyway. Okay? Now, when I am switching between them, right, if I'm going from ABS to PVC or vice versa, PVC to ABS, okay, or back, I need a different kind of glue altogether. I need a glue that kind of does both for me. Now, the modules will say one thing, and then your journeyman or your boss will say something else in this scenario. The module will only tell you transition glue is enough. I don't need to prime the PVC. I don't need to prime ABS. But I do need to actually prime that PVC, right? I still want to prime that PVC. I still want to get rid of that protective layer. The transition glue, I don't think will do enough of it, right? This is an industry thing talking. We'll see what your module says when you get there. I don't know if they've updated it or not, right? Okay? But if you phone IPEX up, the manufacturers of these, they'll be like, yeah, prime the PVC side, right? Okay? Some bosses will go as far as saying, you want to prime that ABS side too. I don't know about that. Do what your boss says. That's the general good wisdom, right? In order to kind of keep your job in the real world. But for the purposes of today, I want you to prime the PVC side. So prime over here, okay? That's gonna go under the PVC side for sure. And then I'm gonna apply something called transition glue. And this is white glue, okay? Colored for a reason, or not colored in this case, right? Made white for a reason, so that inspectors can inspect it, right? Visually inspect whether or not something is up to code. All right? So anytime you're making a transition, so where am I gonna make a transition? Right here, right? There's a transition area right there. And this one here is gonna be transition as well. Okay? The other ones, you're gonna use the appropriate glues for those connections. Any questions so far? All right. The other thing that you're going to notice on there is the way that the measurements are laid out. Okay, if you take a look at it, it's going to tell you center to end, face to end, or FTE, right? Okay. C to C, right? It's good to kind of know what all of these things mean. I don't think we have it written up on here yet, but here's like a nice one from like a previous class that I think Brendan put together right here. It'll walk you through this, okay? All right, so let's talk about some of the different types of measurements that we get. So I'm gonna actually borrow yours because I wanna write these up on the board. Is that all right? You okay with that? Thanks. Okay, so I'm just gonna erase some of my other marks. You guys have all got this all down now? Yeah? You all wrote that down? Okay, cool. Okay, I'm just gonna get rid of that so I can make some room. Actually, and maybe I'll use a different color marker for this because it'll just be a little bit more visually appealing. There we go, I got a red one. Okay. So they tell me here 4.5 inches, okay? Inches, 2 ticks, inches, just in case you don't know. All right, F to E. What does face to end mean? That's face to end, okay? This means face to end of pipe, okay? So end is the end of the pipe, okay? The face, what are they referring to? Is not how deep it goes into the actual fitting, right? Okay? It's this part right here, the very front of that fitting, right? Okay? This is what we call the face of the fitting, okay? So I'm actually going to be measuring right from there to the end. That means that my cut lengths are all end-to-end cut lengths, okay? So when I cut a piece of pipe, I have something called E to E. That's my measurement that I got, okay? That's from the end of the pipe to the end of the pipe. Is that pipe end to end going to be 4 to 4.5 inches? No, so I actually need to know the depth or the engagement of this fitting. How far does a pipe engage to the fitting? Are all fittings created equal? Not really. In the case of standard things like, you know, black iron pipe and things like that, we do have an IPT book. You all probably bought it, right? Which probably, you know, you go in there and it'll actually tell you what the engagement should be, right? How far should it engage? When it comes to plastic pipe, just measure and make sure, right? Okay? Because, and not only that, with every different size, it's going to be a different engagement, right? Okay, 4 inch is obviously going to engage a lot further into the fitting, right? If it's a drainage fitting versus a pressure fitting, the actual engagement of the cup will be different, right? Okay? So you can measure this right here. Put a little measuring tape in there. Figure out how much extra you got to add to that 4.5 inches. Okay, so be aware of that. The next one is going to be center to end, okay? So they say 5 inches center to end, okay? So center of the fitting to the end of pipe. Now, the center of the fitting is not the exact split difference between the face and the face right here divided by 2. It doesn't work like that, okay? What they mean is the center of the pipe that's coming off of the next one, okay? So that center line is this center line right here, okay? So from there to there, when we measure this for your project mark, it's gonna be 5 inches. So that means I'm gonna have to get in there, find out the distance between the center and the face, and then add the engagement. Right? Take off the center to face measurement, which we call the throw, okay? We call that the throw. The distance between the face of this fitting and the center of the fitting right there, we call that the throw, okay? And I'm going to subtract, then there's another term that you will eventually learn called fitting allowance, and I'll remove that, and I'm left with my engagement depth, right? So that's my end-to-end on this is gonna be basically the distance from end to center minus my fitting allowance. But don't worry about the terminology. Just understand how you have to measure it, okay? Does that make sense? Is everybody confused now? No? All right, Mike's confused. All right, so my next measurement is end to back. And they want that to be 5 inches. Or back to end. Now, this is not a common measurement. I don't generally ask people to say, I'm like, hey man, cut me something, you know, my measurement something back to end, right? You're not gonna hear that a lot. The only time that this might happen is like, say I'm piping up towards a wall where I have to make a turn, and I hold my fitting up against the wall, and I'm like, okay, I can go this far, and I want to measure from here to the end of the pipe, and then I can just, it's easier for me to measure off the back, and I can do that, right? But I'm never gonna, only if I'm a jerk am I gonna do that to the guy that I'm working with, right? Because then he's got to get out the fitting, and he's got to try and work out what that distance is. So today we're doing this to you, it's because we're jerks, and there's really no other reason for it. Okay, and then you have center to center, right? So center of this pipe to the center of that pipe, I need that to be 8 inches. I think that's all the measurements I'm getting off this, so you can have that back, thank you. Okay, so that's 8 inches. So I gotta work out, I gotta subtract this distance right here off of my center to center measurement to find out what my end-to-end length on this pipe is gonna be. Does that make sense? Right? That little thing that I've drawn in there right there, that's what we call your fitting allowance, okay? All right? I gotta subtract my fitting allowance times, well, it won't be the same, so 1 off of each, okay? And that's how I'm gonna measure this project out. Now, as you're going, of course, if you have questions while we're doing the project and stuff like that, you're getting a little confused, or you're trying to work out how to do this best, or a good practice for how can I do this when I'm in the field, how do I lay it out, right? That's what we're here for, right? You can ask us, and then we'll show you good tricks and tips, okay? All right, we're not quite ready to get started yet, though, because I don't know how many people here have been power tool obsessed and have never worked a hand tool in their lives, because everything's got a battery. Anybody know how to work a hacksaw? Yeah? Cool. You think you do. Let me grab a hacksaw. I'm gonna grab 2 hacksaws. Both hacksaws both do the same thing. The blade is kind of what matters here, right? Obviously, okay? To me, what really matters is that I buy this one and I never ever buy this hunk of junk, okay? No offense to whoever the manufacturer of this is. I'm not even gonna look, so I can't put it on camera and get sued for saying it. I shouldn't even show it. Just focus right here. Okay. Doesn't matter. You can have your own version of that, whatever you like. I prefer these, okay? Worked with these for life. And the only difference between this and any other hacksaw, as far as I'm concerned, and that's all preference sort of based, is that I don't get a lot of twist on my blade while I'm trying to cut, right? Just the way that they've manufactured, they've been making this one for years and it works. I don't know why they ever stopped, okay? I don't know how close you can zoom in on the blade, but the orientation of the blade matters, okay? So I can tell which way the cut is by dragging my finger very lightly across the blade. It's gonna grab in one direction and it's gonna go smooth in the other direction because the teeth are pointed in a certain direction, okay? The teeth should be pointing forwards, okay? Your cut is on the forward stroke. There is no cutting on the back stroke, okay? You might not have known that. Files are exactly the same. If you ever had a file, you've seen those movies where the guy's trying to file his way out of the prison? He's like, right, okay? He's working it wrong, okay? Files work in one direction on the forward stroke. The back stroke, you try not to drag it because you end up dulling the teeth, okay? Same thing with hacksaws. Common mistakes with hacksaws, okay? People use about this much of the blade. Too short of a stroke, okay? You use the whole blade stroke because you get the most cutting. It will do the cutting for you. You do not have to work super hard to make this happen, okay? The other thing that you don't want to do is make a crooked cut. That takes a little bit of practice, time and years and whatever of doing it. If you, you can practice that today if you want, okay? But as I'm moving forward, I'm gonna use the whole thing. Notice the speed at which I'm going here. That's a bit slower than I usually go, but I'm just doing it for purposes of demonstration. I'm holding it kind of close to where I'm cutting. I'm not right next to it. That's a bad idea, right? But over here, I'm gonna get wobble, right? And that's gonna make it really hard to cut. So I'm gonna be relatively close, just to get a nice rigid hold on it, okay? And as I cut through, I'm just going to keep an eye on it, try and keep it as straight as I can. This one is not super straight, but it's not terrible. Okay? And I'm going to use that whole blade. And if you're cutting something like steel where you're getting in fatigued because it's taking a long time, you know, 1 stroke per second is good. Okay? And I do not need to use my arm to do everything, right? I can kind of lean into it a little bit, and I can use my shoulder and save myself future tendonitis, carpal tunnel syndrome, and all of the fun things that come with being in the trades, right? I can save myself. What I don't want to do is be like cutting like this. I've seen guys trying to do that. I mean, if you can avoid it, right? Okay, sometimes you're up in the ceiling and you have to kind of do something, right? Okay, so I'm going to cut it, okay? Something like that. There's no rule saying that I have to cut with a hacksaw. I'm just saying one day your battery's going to die, okay? Right? Keep a hacksaw handy. The other thing I'm using right here is I'm using a very, I'm using actually the wrong blade for the purpose of what I'm doing right here, okay? This is a metal cutting blade. It's got a lot of teeth per inch, right? The TPI, you're gonna see it red on the end of these blades, you're gonna see TPI, right? And this one is gonna be, I don't even know what it says on here. I don't know if I can still read it. Oh, 24 teeth per inch, okay? That's a lot of teeth per inch. They make ones that are 12 to 14. Those are perfect for ABS, and you'll go through like butter and fast, okay? They're not good for metal because they grab like too much. It's too rough of a blade, right? Okay, too coarse of a blade. But this fine blade, you can use it for this, but it's not ideal. If you're out in the industry and you're using a hacksaw all day long, you're gonna wanna get the right one, okay? But again, I'm gonna set it on there so that the teeth are going in the right direction. I don't know that every one of these in this shop is set up correctly. Sometimes instructors switch them around intentionally just to mess with the guys who are doing the projects, right? So check it, right? Check to make sure it's facing the right direction. Now's a good time for us to talk a little bit about, that was just my whole demonstration on how to cut something. When it comes to cutting any type of material, it always kind of starts out the same. First step, I'm gonna measure, okay? I'm going to measure my length. I've worked out what I want, I'm gonna measure it, okay? Next step, I'm gonna mark it. Okay, on black pipe, pencil doesn't show up very well, whatever. Do I absolutely have to mark everything all the time? Depends on what you're working with, right? And how precise they want you to be. But marking is useful, if I can, right? Then I will measure again. I'm just kidding. But yes, maybe just double check, right? Okay? Measure, mark, cut. Cut the pipe, okay? Just like the way I showed you. What's the next thing I'm gonna do? On every type of pipe. What's that? Verify is not a bad step, but it's not necessarily the one that I'm thinking about. Yeah, look at all that stuff on the end there. You can see that there's a bunch of crap still attached to this, right? It's got a fun name. Sounds like it came out of the Lord of the Rings. It's called swarf. I don't know why they called it swarf. Anyway, it's called swarf. And all it is it's the cuttings off the pipe, and some of it attaches. And I really want to get rid of some of this stuff, and I'm going to ream it out. Now, I can ream this out like ABS and plastic for the most part. I can kind of get my finger in there, take it out. PVC is a little rougher. If you don't want to do that, okay, you can use an actual reamer. A lot of guys would just keep a chisel nearby and just kind of run it through the inside of the pipe just to get the stuff off the inside. Why do I want to get rid of that stuff? What's that? It might interfere with my glue joint, not necessarily. Sorry, but better fit, maybe. Yeah.
Does that stuff get into my pump?
It could. Okay. That stuff can carry on down the line, and if it's in a pressure system with a pumping system attached, or if I'm in a circulating system or a system where things need to go through a mechanical piece of equipment where I'm concerned about that, or even just running around and clogging up stuff, right? I got a bunch of mechanical apparatus attached to my piping, it's gonna clog stuff up. If this is drainage, what's gonna hang on to that as it's flowing by?
Poo.
Yeah, toilet paper, right? That will hang on and clog things up, right? Okay, so I want smooth flow through the pipe. That was the whole point of it, right? I wanted something where everything could kind of just glide along nicely, right? Okay? All right, so ream. We call that reaming. I don't know what I do with my pen. There it is. Okay, So I want to ream the pipe. Now from here, depending on whether or not I'm working with different materials, the next step might be a little different, okay? If I was working with copper, it would be clean, right? I would have to actually clean it, okay? But I'm not working with copper, I'm working with this. So if I'm working with ABS and plastic, it's also gonna be a little different because if I'm, or sorry, ABS and PVC. If I'm working with PVC, the next step is gonna be prime, right? So if this is for PVC, I'll just put that over here. The next step would be prime the pipe and the fitting. Okay? I would prime the pipe and the fitting. So, oh, okay, I got transparent primer here, clear primer, and I have purple primer. What's the difference between these two? Yep. One of them is purple. I give you two guesses. Which one?
The purple.
The purple one. Yeah. Okay. Now, is there a difference in function? Not necessarily, none so that you should really matter. There is a difference to inspectors. Okay? Inspectors nowadays, especially when it comes to drainage and stuff like that, they really are concerned with the purple primer being the one that you use. Now, this is actually PVC cement, and I grabbed the wrong one. Sorry. This is purple primer right here. And you can tell, because it's basically like water, right? The glue doesn't move, okay? Sorry, there's my primer. I was holding up the wrong one. It's a purple can, it fooled me. All right. So the inspectors want the purple so that they can visually inspect and make sure you primed it, right? The clear stuff, you know, they can't see it. And they're like, oh, did you prime that? I don't know, right? And they say, I did. And they're like, prove it. And you're like, go lick it. Anyway, they'll taste it. This is actually good for lots of stuff, though. And I don't want you to try this and experiment with it at home on your carpet, but I accidentally spilled some ABS glue on my carpet once, a little drip of it, and it was really hard to get out. But while it was still kind of liquid, and I wanted to get that yellow stain out, clear primer kind of worked. You gotta be careful. If you're dealing with a synthetic carpet and something that's not wool or something like that, then it's gonna melt the carpet, okay? Right, don't do that, okay? So, you know, really the moral of the story is don't spill your glue. So, okay, so there's clear primer. I'm gonna use the purple primer because that's the right one. Okay? And I'm gonna, like, here's the thing, guys. This stuff runs, it has a mind of its own, right? It gets away on you because it is so fluid, okay? More fluid than water. It's kind of like where water won't run, this stuff's like, oh, I'll go, right? So, I want to get as much of this off of here as I can. It's going to spill, it's going to splatter, I'm going to get it on my fingers, it's going to be in the way and all that stuff. And a good piece of advice is to do this, and like if you're working in a space where you're concerned about making a mess, put it inside like a big cardboard box and work in there, okay? Just to kind of catch all the drips. I'm in, okay? And I can do this, okay? I'm going to hold it upside down and do this, okay? Because if I do it like this, then it runs all the way down into the fitting and it gets down on the other side and it drips onto my hand, okay? And I would prime it just like that, nice and simple. And then I would do the same to the piece of pipe. Now with the piece of pipe, I'm not gonna hold it up because it's a whole length here, but I would hold that pipe vertically and work it around the bottom. And I wanna go a little bit further than what I think the engagement of the pipe will be so that the inspector can see it, right? Because if I go just the right amount, then it's gonna hide underneath the glue and then he's gonna question you. So, like I said, I'm gonna prime both fitting and pipe. Get as much of that knocked off of there as I can. It's gonna run, and there's plenty in that little dauber on the end there, okay? And again, I'm gonna go further than the end of my pipe. Now, usually you can tell whether or not you put enough because if you take a look here, you can see that the writing is still on there, okay? This is cleaning off that surface. That writing should come off if I put on enough. And bingo, there you go, the writing came off. Okay, so the pipe identification can actually be taken off with primer. And that's a good indicator to know that you've got enough primer on there. Because if it's not beyond the pipe ID, then it hasn't penetrated that surface of the pipe. Okay? So, I have that. The other thing I'm gonna do, because I'm clumsy and I talk with my hands a lot, I'm gonna close this can up before I knock it all over this guy here and he makes me buy him new clothes. Because no dry cleaner in the world is gonna get that. And otherwise I'd have to make you take a bath in clear primer to get out the purple primer, and I don't know if you want to do that. I don't think you do. Okay. So, using PVC glue, now the other thing that you want to check is like, is this glue okay? A lot of guys leave their glue sitting on their truck. And with ABS glue, you can do that. Get yourself a little caddy for all of your glues, and at the end of the day, grab it when you're coming out of the truck and bring it into your house or into your heated garage or someplace like that. PVC glue does not do well in frozen temperatures. And if the can hasn't been shut proper, and if oxygen is getting in there and air and stuff like that, it'll dry out that glue. And I can tell you whether or not that's going to be good glue or bad glue, because this right here is not good glue. Okay? It feels more like I'm handling some very flimsy rubber. Okay? So that glue is no good. I'm not going to use that glue. I'm going to grab a different glue. And it's a little bit fluid when it's fluid, right? So it does move around a little bit. It's not like primer. Okay? I'm going to get that off there. That's what glue should look like. It should run. Okay? Should come off the dauber. Oh, and down onto the ground. Okay. So I'm wearing not shop clothes under here today, so I'm going to be a little bit more careful. All right. So again, knock as much as you can off of the dauber. And then I'm going to apply it to both pipe and fitting. I can hold them both in one hand if it's small things, right? Not a big deal. And usually what I'm going to do is I'm going to apply it to the inside first. This is a preference thing. Do or don't, doesn't really matter, okay? And if there's still enough there, I'll apply it to the outside, okay? And I'm gonna take a look around, because sometimes when we're working around the back of the fitting, we think we put enough glue on there, but I didn't. So I want to inspect that I actually put enough on, okay? I got a bit of a window of time here where I can make this happen. And the larger the fitting, the larger the surface area, the quicker you need to be, kind of, almost, right? Because that surface area is drying out the glue as we speak. I'm going to engage that, and I'm going to give it a quarter turn. The turning spreads the glue around. If I'm, and before I carry on talking about the next thing I'm going to do, I'm going to hold it there. Because it'll pop itself out. It'll push the fitting back out on me, right? It'll start doing that. And ABS glue is famous for this, and the colder it is, the more likely it is to happen. If I'm working in -10 with ABS glue gets more fluid with lower temperatures, right? It becomes a little bit more sort of, runny, right? And when I apply that stuff in -10 or whatever sort of thing, and the larger the fitting, I want to hold that longer, okay? I'm going to hold this here for like maybe 15 seconds for this size, and then I'm going to watch it and make sure that it doesn't push back out, because you'll be able to see it drag the glue a little bit if it did, like if you didn't hold it long enough, right? It'll actually push back on that glue, and I'll see little drag marks, okay? And then I'll know that the pipe isn't fully engaged into the engagement, which is going to throw off your measurements, and it's also going to mean that effectively the pressure rating on here has been a little bit adjusted based on the fact that you didn't get the pipe all the way into the fitting, okay? Engagement matters, right? Okay? I went to a job once where I was like moving around some water line stuff, and I put my hand on a valve on a water line to the city where we had shut this off, okay? And the city doesn't have a handy shut-off valve easy for me to reach if something goes wrong. I put my hand on that valve and it popped off in my hand. It had been there for 20 years, and it just came off. And now I got water spraying everywhere from the city. That sucks. And I noticed that the guy had soldered it on there, and the solder was only about that thick. Like it was on there about 1/8. So you didn't get that fitting jammed right onto the pipe. Okay, that's PVC. ABS, same procedure, no primer. Okay? And with the transition glue, what am I going to prime? PVC. Am I going to prime the ABS? No. If I did, would it matter? Probably not. It might actually help it. That's why some guys think you should, right? Okay, so I'm not going to demonstrate for those ones because I want you guys to be able to get started, but I'm going to show you the glues, and I'm going to show you where they are. Obviously, if it's yellow and stuff, then it's a ABS, and these little cans are great with the brushes inside, okay? And this right here, you're gonna read it, it's gonna see PVC to ABS, medium white, transition cement. Okay, don't get them mixed up. All right, so I think you're all gonna be working individually today, right? You're all gonna work on your own project. So So you're gonna need like a station to work at. You can work at the table if you want, okay? If you're wearing nice clothes, you might wanna be very, very careful, or if you have some shop clothes to change into, you can do that. The other thing is, if you have gloves and you wanna use gloves, then go ahead and use gloves, right? I mean, you can work barehanded too, but these are chemicals we're dealing with, right? Okay? I've been showing you this whole demonstration barehanded because I was planning on not getting a whole lot all over my hands and I'm not working all day long. But I will say that future cancer comes from working with your hands without gloves with chemicals, right? Okay? Things like solder flux and lead and everything else, and so a lot of stuff gets absorbed through your hands. So there's gonna be a lot of times when you're gonna want to wear gloves, and there are gonna be times when you absolutely cannot wear gloves. When we get into the threading, there will be no gloves, okay? Gloves are like equal removed fingers with pipe threading. Is there any questions at all? Or do you want to just get started and see what questions show up as you go? Okay, so oh, you have a question, yeah. Good question. He just asked whether or not the pipe needs to be ever beveled. And if you don't know what beveled means, right here, this is a non-beveled edge. A beveled edge would be, oh, Brendan brought some rubber gloves here that you guys can use. Fantastic, okay? Okay, beveling this pipe would mean putting a file on it and putting a little bit of a rounded edge, or not a rounded edge, but like a 45 or a 30 degree. If you're a welder and a steam fitter, that angle matters, but in this case, you know, just kind of taking the edge off of this pipe. With PVC, yes, especially with larger diameters. IPEX changed their rules on this. They didn't used to require, but IPEX now will not warranty certain installations if you're not beveling your pipe with larger PVC, okay? Because what it does is, because it's such a sharp edge with this, it just pushes the glue to the back of the fitting and not enough glue stays on the pipe. So they want that bevel so that the glue can actually slip up between the fitting and the pipe inside of the cup, okay? So that's a good question, thanks for asking. Okay, any other questions?